Whoa. It's nothing quite that prepares you for kind of walking out on stage and there being hundreds of people looking at you. Shock. So I'm here today to talk about the power of publisher data, the business that we've built around it, and how we're using AppNexus technology to help us in that respect. Now, the Guardian audience extension is called Guardian Plus, and it's a platform through which we work with some of the world's largest advertisers, and which now leads our advertising division in terms of product innovation. So we'll start with what is it, a definition if you like, our definition. Now we see audience extension as a means or a process to leverage unique audience intelligence off platform in order to create incremental opportunity. And that creates incremental opportunity for our advertisers in terms of return on investment, but also for our business as well in terms of incremental revenue. So how does this fit with a publisher business? So we'll talk about this in the context of the anatomy of a publisher. Now, The Guardian is a media brand with global influence. We have quality editorial content, we're free to access, and we deliver impact in many different ways. You know, our content influences change in governments and policy, and it also influences consumers to purchase new products. We have that influence at scale. So we have 150 million unique browsers worldwide, and around 50 million of which are in the UK. And we have that scale with depth, so there's real engagement with our audience. So there's a frequency of visit, there's loyal audiences amongst those readers, there's real time spent with our content, really deep dwell, and then beyond which we also have subscription relationships, we have millions of users that are registered across our platforms, and we also have users who are transacting with our businesses, for example, Guardian Soulmates and Guardian Jobs, which are two of the largest properties in their categories. And together, this gives us a really intimate understanding of our audience. Now, in total, we capture 210 billion data events per month around that audience. And those data events pertain to the interests, the observed interests, the intent through incoming search terms, and the characteristics of those users when they're on our platform. And we know that data to be extremely high value to our advertisers in that we've been selling it to them for the past 10 years or so. So we have some really, really strong assets. But then we also share many of the same challenges that every publisher has. So, of course, we have finite inventory on our owned and operated platforms, and within which we're subjected to the ebbs and flows of demand and supply. And in essence, we're effectively managing our own microeconomy. Now, traditionally, we've used audience segmentation as a means of creating value within that economy and driving up yields. But the challenge with that is that audience segmentation on owned and operated platforms is often limited in terms of its scale. And of course, there's just a wider framing challenge. I guess we're conditioned, we're wired to think as a seller, as a publisher. And what we're talking about here is the opportunity to cross that divide and become a buyer. Whoops, I missed my favourite slide, the sheep slide. Sorry, there you go. Enjoy it whilst it lasts. So the opportunity. So we have an abundance of data, and there's real accessibility in terms of DSP technology. Now, we saw an opportunity to create value, again, for our advertisers in terms of better return on investment, and also for our business in terms of incremental revenue. What we also saw was the opportunity to create a mechanism through which we could start to influence greater control over our economy, how we could manage supply and demand to a greater extent, and influence inflation and deflation around our inventory. So how do we go about this? So we bought into our first DSP in 2012, and we moved to AppNexus about 18 months later when we saw greater sophistication and greater flexibility in that technology. And we built a team around that technology, and this included sales and operational resource, and it meant that we were bringing on new skill sets in engineering and science backgrounds. We were hiring from the ad networks, and we also began hiring from the trading desk too. And we know this space to be extremely competitive. So literally everyone has a DSP these days. The SSPs have a DSP, apparently. The DMPs have their own DSP, even. Everyone has one. So differentiation is really, really key. Now, for us, our focus is around audience through our unique data and on contextual delivery of that audience. Now, over time, we've developed quite a sophisticated approach to that audience segmentation, which I'll tell you more about in a moment or two. And we always test our segmentations against third-party vendors as a means of benchmarking their quality. And what we're interested in is their relative performance in terms of scale and also the return on investment we deliver to advertisers. Now, the chart I'm going to show you is firm proof of the value of publisher data. So the headline here is, I suppose, the difference in performance that first-party data delivers. So on the vertical axis, you've got scale. Now that's unique browsers in the UK. Please ignore the index label. On the horizontal, you've got performance, and that's effective cost per acquisition that's been indexed. So you've got best on the right and least performing on the left. And as a control, the base for all the other segments in their index, you've got the no data. It's a prospecting line, kind of sits off the chart in terms of scale because it's pretty much infinite, but the index is 100. So everything else falls off of that. So next, you've got vendor B. So this is a large third-party data vendor, and this is their fashionistas segment off the shelf. And we don't really know where this data's come from. We don't know how it's been modeled. And based upon this outcome, it looks pretty mediocre in terms of performance. It doesn't really shift the bar in terms of return on investment. Next, we've got a DMP lookalike. Now, this is from our DMP. It's a third-party DMP. And again, despite it being we don't really know the methodology that's been used. It's a black box, and you can probably tell I'm slightly cynical of its performance. And actually, the outcome isn't significant. It's kind of approaching twice as healthy in terms of performance versus the base. There's not a great deal of scale there. You're not really going to move the needle. Next, we've got vendor A, and this is a fashion enthusiast segment, like the previous third-party vendor. We don't really know where this data's come from. We don't know how it's been modeled, but actually, it does deliver a pretty strong performance. It performs 3 times better than the base, the control. But the challenge, similar to the DMP, is the lack of scale. So in terms of impact for the advertiser, it's always going to be limited. Then we've got the Guardian Fashionistas segment. Now, this is what I describe as a traditional segment. It's been built by our commercial data team, and there's a level of human intuition that's gone into this. The rules will be a combination of the depth and the frequency of visit around specific types of content. And this instance is probably fashion and lifestyle. Now, the great news is, from a publisher perspective, this is extremely valuable from a performance angle. Now, it indexes at almost 4.5 times the base, really, really strong, but like the last 2 segments, the scale is pretty insignificant. It doesn't move the needle. And this is where guarding custom audiences begin to become really important. Now, custom audiences are built by our data science team. They're modeled for every advertiser. They're completely bespoke. They take data from that advertiser's customer, their behaviors and their interests on the Guardian, and we use that to inform a really transparent model that we share with our advertisers. Now, the output of this model is this performance. Fantastic outcome in terms of effective cost per acquisition and great scale as well. So a really, really strong story. And again, this is how we're differentiated from every other training desk in the market. No one else has Guardian data, very few are transparent, and this is where we're completely different. But there's actually more to this story. Now, this chart here demonstrates the relative customer value of the customers behind each of those segments. And again, what you can see on the right end of this scale is that publisher first-party data not only delivers better cost per acquisition at greater scale, but actually the customer value within that is stronger. So Guardian custom audiences deliver 50% greater customer value based upon basket size than the nearest third-party equivalent. And this is what our advertisers are really excited about. So I suppose this is kind of a taste of the value of publisher data. As described, we're investing significantly in our data science function, specifically around this. And I think this brings us nicely onto context. And of course, the delivery of the right user must be paired with the right environment. And we see context as a hygiene factor. Now, I think in programmatic, what we recognise is a fantastic opportunity created by technology to deliver more intelligent targeting than ever before, and with efficiency through that automation as well. But the outcome, unfortunately, often looks pretty ordinary. So where we have Cadbury associated with Coronation Street in TV, you've got O2 associated with the England rugby team within sport. For me, based upon my experience on this website, my association is apparently with IBM and chubby cats. So I think there's got to be more to this, and I think this is where we must be investing as heavily in the contextual methodology as we are in the data science. And I don't use this site, this was just purely for the purpose of this screen grab. Now, from a publisher perspective, there's a real incentive around quality because, of course, we've got established consumer-facing brands to protect, and we've got reputation to maintain in the market. And we can't be in a position where we risk being damaged by poor buying decisions. And we've seen that elsewhere in the market with share prices of the networks tumbling. So we take a really conservative approach when it comes to managing quality. And we take a layered approach. We use technology, we use machine learning and data, and we use that with human measures in order to deliver a really, really strong, positive and healthy outcome. And this, of course, protects our advertisers, but also means that as a network, we have really healthy quality scores. The other defining point of this approach is that it differentiates our demand in the auction. Now, where we pursue value, most of the rest of the market still pursues price. And when it comes to accessing high-quality audiences, we have, therefore, a really strong ability to compete and win those impressions that we attach to high-value users. So the message here is, you need a USP, and we feel we have real strength in terms of audience and data, and that being paired with quality context and environment. Now, in terms of value to our business, so Guardian Plus effectively started as an experiment back in 2012. And I remember the old days fondly. In fact, I could see a couple of our guys here. The old days of sitting down the end of the office, being the slightly strange guys who would be kind of buying shitloads of inventory whilst all of our colleagues are frantically trying to sell it as quickly as they possibly can. And that's kind of changed. We're now at the centre of things. We run the entire programmatic operation. And it's delivered a massive difference in terms of revenue. We've doubled our programmatic revenue through Guardian Plus. And it's allowed us to do so whilst also growing yields across our platforms. From a strategic point of view, our learnings and our behaviour as a buyer has helped inform our sell-side strategy. We feel that we have a really fantastic understanding of what buyers want, what their needs are, and their requirements as well. And that leaves us feeling really well aligned with our customers. And all the while, we continue to innovate. We've moved away from just direct response. We now have social products, we have video products, and we have a product which delivers guaranteed viewability as well. So that is pretty much it from me. I'm going to leave you with just 3 key recommendations. The first of which feels like a no-brainer. Start simple and build iteratively. But if you're anything like us, kind of the prospect of a new toy, some new technology, we always kind of have to resist the temptation of going for the silver bullet every time. We always take on too much too soon. So keep it simple and avoid sapping your resource. You'll probably get there quicker if you take a really structured, simple approach. Secondly, invest in your people. So we all know that programmatic resource can be extremely expensive. And where we've had a great deal of success is in hiring people that come from different backgrounds, are extremely smart, but we train them up. And we get them not only involved in our buying operation, but they're engaged in the sales side, and they're also involved in our product development. And this leaves them really broad in terms of experience and empowers them to derive value when they're working around our ecosystem. And they create as much revenue as our sales team. And then finally, I suppose it's a call to the market. Pursue quality over price. I think quality and context is a prerequisite for ROI. When you think about that IBM example and the fat cat, in order to turn programmatic to a brand building medium, this is critical. We need to get this right. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.